it becomes a little bit difficult sometimes to wade through all of the questions that are similar or exactly the same and pick out the ones that, are different and need to be answered. So Daryl here, and after several hours of sifting through Facebook messages and emails, most of which this week went right back to the topic of Spotify, narrowed down it to 3 different questions that I don't think I've touched on, at least in this forum before. So I'm going to get to these 3 here today, and thank you all for submitting your questions, even the ones we don't use. Everyone else, feel free to keep sending them in, sorroweternalblog@gmail.com, or also our Facebook page, facebook.com/sorroweternal. So getting right into it here, Bridget would like to know who some of our favorite labels are. Now that's a difficult question, because I don't know that you can really be a fan of a label. I mean, labels have bands, so you're a fan of the bands then? So I guess by saying, our favorite labels, you're talking about the labels that employ the majority of the bands we like. So that's a tricky question, but I mean, there are a few labels that I have a lot of respect for, that I follow on a regular basis, and that, when they sign a band, typically I can be assured that it's at least worth a listen. So I mean, let's go right down the line. I mean, you have the major ones. You have the Century Media, Nuclear Blast, Napalm, Spine Farm, and Season of Mist, I would say, are my favorite quote-unquote major labels. But out of those, I've ranted about Season of Mist before, and how they just seem to go so far and so wide to get so many great bands. But if you take the smaller, I guess you'd call them independent labels, or whatever you want to call them, the smaller labels are doing a lot of the work, because they are giving these bands a chance to get out albums, whether it's paying for manufacturing, whatever else. So I mean, in doing the site, we've had the pleasure of dealing with some really great smaller labels who have opened our eyes to a lot of music. I mean, Italy alone just seems to be full of amazing labels and bands and what have you. So I mean, I'll call out Scarlet Records, Baker Team. I know they're linked together. Violent Journey Records, Colony Records. I mean, these are all labels that are on the smaller side with limited funds and limited reach, but they're just doing fucking great things. And actually, recently I stumbled upon a group called Pest Productions, which is putting out several new albums that I've actually have listened to and have been thoroughly enjoying for the last couple days. So Pest Productions, I guess, I don't necessarily know they're a label, but enjoying what they're doing as well. So yeah, I mean, that's a couple. And like I said, the question obviously goes far deeper than that, but I could rant about this for days. My favorite label is the ones that employ the bands that I like. So yeah, so thank you, Bridget. Let's see. Antonio wants to know if my feelings have changed on black metal. Well, the short answer to that question is yes. When I started doing this site, 2 years ago with Justin, I hadn't really ever gone through a black metal phase. I didn't understand it. The production values, the screeching vocals, it just sounded, it was just too one-dimensional for me at the time. I didn't really get into it. I just couldn't. I mean, I tried. I listened to every Burzum release and hoped that something was going to hit me, and it never did. But in doing this site, we've been exposed to so many different bands and labels putting stuff out, and I think the first one that really caught me, that maybe started my transformation, was the album by Ogun from Italy on Colony Records, as I mentioned before. And the name of the album was Black Metal Unbound. And in doing an interview with him, he kind of said that he wanted to take a lot of the stigma off of black metal and just put out an album that just made sense. And it did, because it was not just basic black metal. It wasn't what I had been shown black metal to be. It wasn't just fast guitars, machine gun drums and screeching vocals. I mean, he was doing different things with guitar work, and there was a lot more subtlety to it, and I really enjoyed that. And I think that in listening to that, it opened my eyes and ears to other things. But I mean, I've listened to a lot of black metal albums. I've reviewed them, and one thing I want to mention is that even not liking black metal, I can separate my not liking a style from whether it's executed well. So I had done a review for the band Skogan. Oh no, excuse me, Justin did Skogan. But I can appreciate that kind of music. I could appreciate it. It wasn't until listening to some of the more avant black metal bands where things finally started to come together for me. So I mean, you have bands that are doing black metal, but they're doing it with new twists to it. So Malnat, for instance, had an accordion in their music. Their newest album is just kind of this avant black metal sound that it impresses me because it takes everything that you would want from black metal, turns the screws on the production work, makes it crystal clear, and adds in a dose of melody, which sometimes albums like that really need. So I think that bands like that are really changing my perception of the genre, and maybe somewhere along the line, like a metalcore band will do the same thing, but as of this point they haven't. So yeah, I think my opinion has changed drastically on black metal, and I'm hoping that it continues to change because I have some reviews coming up in the next couple weeks of some black metal bands that are doing things that are pretty interesting, and to the point where you might not even consider them black metal anymore. But I guess that's another topic for another day. And the last question for this week comes from Marcus, and Marcus wants to know if I suddenly came into money, what would be the first thing I would do with it in the music world? Oh man, it's funny that this comes up. I actually had this discussion with my future wife, saying that if I won the lottery, I think the first thing I would do, I'd want to get the website done so it's actually sorroweternal.com. I'd want to have some people who could deal with a lot of that stuff, but I want to bring music to the masses. So samplers would happen more often, but mainly what I would want to do is take some of these bands that I've built whatever you want to call kind of relationship with, whether it's Blizzard at Sea or Appalachian Winter or the Massacre Cave. I'll get back to them in a second. I want to take bands like that and get them in the studio. I would pay for their studio time. I don't want to make money from this. Obviously, depending on how much money I came into. If we're talking, I win the lottery for $100 million. If the Massacre Cave needs money to get in the studio to get their songs down, absolutely, I'll write the check. That's what I'd want to do. So, I guess technically that's not really a label of any kind, but I would want to make sure that bands like that have the chance to be heard, because the Massacre Cave actually recorded some new demos, some live demos. You can see the clips and the full songs on YouTube. I actually linked to it on our Facebook page, and those guys are awesome. And for live demos, they sound great. The songs are great. I think I've converted a couple new fans as a result. So if you're telling me that I could get the Massacre Cave in a studio for $10 grand, $5 grand, $1,000, sold. You tell me that Blizzard at Sea, they did their Kickstarter to fund their new album. If I had $1 grand sitting around that I didn't need, first thing I'd do, hand it over, make an album. So I think that's what I would want to do if I came into money. Now, the other side of that is obviously, getting bands to be able to tour here. I'm not exactly all that well versed in the business side of music. I know a fair amount, but as far as getting bands here to tour and all the costs that go along with that, that's a little outside of my realm of knowledge. But I'd love to set up, a small tour to get some of these smaller, lesser known bands over here and get them noticed and seen and heard, not only by fans but maybe by labels and A&R guys, guys who can maybe get them the credit they deserve, because oftentimes these bands don't get the credit they deserve. You look at a band like Blizzard at Sea, who I cannot think of a band that that has been in my CD player more consistently over the last 2.5 years than Blizzard at Sea. It's amazing that you can go onto their Facebook page and only see 400 some odd likes. It just seems impossible. So you have 471 likes for a band that's just doing amazing things in the sludge metal the realm there. So I would love to see bands like that get the credit they deserve. So I'd spend my money, probably poorly, but I would make sure that every band that I wanted to see had a chance to get out there. So submit your bands to me, and if I win the lottery, I'll go down the list and I'll start funding some albums. First on the list, of course, would be the Massacre Cave, Blizzard at Sea, Appalachian Winter, North Song, Vile Eye Chaos. I would be writing checks for them to get their stuff recorded, mixed, mastered, and produced. Because, damn it, if I want those albums, then other people probably would too. They just got to find them first. So I guess that's about it. You know what? I got one more question here. It's a very quick one. It'll be a couple word answer here. But someone asked where I look to get vinyl. I've been buying a lot of vinyl, a lot of metal vinyl, and I'll have two answers for you. One is, of course, you get it directly from the band, whether it's from their Bandcamp website, Facebook, whatever. And that's a great way to support a band. But as far as record stores, I actually recently discovered locally Dark Side Records and Gallery, which is a couple towns over from here. And I went in there and managed to grab a whole lot of awesome stuff, both metal and non-metal. So I was really stoked at that. So you can actually use them. They ship everywhere. I'm told that they ship stuff all across the country all the time. So I think their website, darksiderecordsandgallery.com. So definitely check that out if you're into vinyl, used, new, metal, rap, rock, jazz, whatever. That's the good place to check. So guys, thank you very much again for listening. Remember to get your questions in for next week. I'll be answering every damn thing I can possibly get to, hopefully not pertaining to Spotify, in which case I might end up having to do an entire Spotify episode again, which I'm trying to avoid. So thanks, guys, and stay tuned for the new episode of the podcast tomorrow at 8, and have a good fucking weekend.